So these are the steps in the verb tense study, and I did pass out, I think we're short a little bit, but everyone has the descriptors of these 3 methodologies. So as I'm explaining it, feel free to take notes on your paper. And also, as I'm explaining it, be thinking about how you can adapt this or utilize this in your classroom. Okay? So you have a preview chart. So the first thing you do is you go over the preview charts. I'll be explaining this. And then you provide some examples, oral or written. And it just depends. You know, secondary might want to have more written examples. Elementary, you might just give your examples orally. You brainstorm 3 to 5 subjects, singular and plural. You brainstorm 3 to 7 verbs. And then you select a subject and a verb. You have students generate a sentence. Then they report their sentences. And then you extend those sentences or provide error correction. Another thing that's really important in these methodologies is that you do provide on-the-spot error correction. And I know some people feel that that can inhibit students, but if you do it in a gentle way that dignifies the student, you know, that as a teacher I'm correcting you so that you can learn how to say it correctly, then it's okay. Because if you let students continue making errors in their English language production, then those errors become solidified. And then it's more difficult to change them. And then you record their sentences on chart paper. And we'll go over all of these. You lead them through a grammar analysis of the sentences. And then at the very end is the independent practice where they write their own sentences. So now the purpose of verb tense study is really you're working with a particular verb tense. And it could be, you know, if there's something that is like that you as a grade level or with other teachers you're working on, that could be the particular verb tense that you're working on. Or it could be, if you notice in your students' speech and in their writing that there's a particular verb tense that they're not very good at or that they make a lot of errors at, that might be the verb tense that then you decide to focus on. All right, so here is a sample of a preview chart. Now this would not be one that I would use in my first grade class. With my first grade class or with the younger children, I would focus on, for example, I would have one of these just for declarative and a separate chart just for negative sentence construction and a separate chart for interrogative sentences. Okay? So the content objective for verb tense study is for this particular one, for this particular verb tense study, I'll be working with simple present tense. So then after you have your objective, then you have your parts of speech. So for this particular one, it's noun, verb, helping verb do for the questions, and then adverb not for the negative sentences. And then you have a formula. Again, I would just have one of these for elementary, but for middle school, you can have the 3. So declarative. So the formula is a singular noun plus a verb, and in the simple present tense, you add an S to the verb or an ES to the verb. And a finisher. What's very confusing for students is that you're saying it's a singular noun and then you're saying add an S to the verb. And that always confused my kids because they're like, but it's singular, you don't add an S. But it's like, yes, but in simple present tense, you add an S to the verb. And then for a plural noun, then you don't add an S to the verb and then a finisher. And then you would have an example. So for example, for a declarative sentence, the boy walks, okay, and we have the S on walks because the boy is singular, to the park. For a plural sentence, the boys walk to the park. No S on the verb because your subject is plural. Okay? And then the negative formula would be singular noun plus does not plus the verb and the finisher. And a finisher could be anything. It could be a prepositional phrase. It could be an adverbial phrase, any kind of clause at the end of your sentence that finishes the sentence. So then the examples would be the boy does not walk to the park and the boys do not walk to the park. And I don't know if for middle school, I know elementary, they really have a hard time with does and do. You know, they usually stick with do. So it's, you know, to teach them does for singular is an important teaching point. And then for interrogative, so then does, singular noun, verb and a finisher, end it with a question mark. And for plural, do, plural noun, and then a verb and a finisher. Okay, and so for the interrogative, does the boy walk to the park for singular, and then do the boys walk to the park for plural. All right, so here is my verb tense study for simple present tense. I'm just going to use declarative sentences, okay? So I'm not going to go with the interrogative or the negative. So here's my picture. So I want you to think first of what would be a singular subject. Think of a word that you would use or what subject you can use, and feel free to throw in adjectives. It makes your sentences way more interesting. Okay? All right, so if we look up here, let's start with singular. So it could either be this subject or this subject that you're referring to. Who can give me a really good singular subject to start off the sentence? Daddy. Give me a complete subject. Very good. So then elephant would be your noun in that subject. What could another subject be? The helpless baby elephant. Okay, very good. What would be a pronoun? She, perfect. And he for the baby. So there are plural subjects, or our singular subjects, all right? So now I want you to think if you were to use a subject, or what would be the subject if you were to create a sentence for both of them together? The dirty gray elephants? I heard it. Who said pachyderms? So I want you to think of some verbs to describe what these two are doing. Bathes. Okay, now I'm going to put, this is one thing that they say too to do is to write it in the infinitive form so that students will have to actually conjugate it when they create their sentences. So the infinitive form, I'm going to put to bathe because that's the infinitive form. All right, let's see. Is Christine here? Hey, Christine. Nudge. Ooh, I like it. To nudge. One more verb, Julius.
Save.
Save. Okay, so to save. All right, so now what you're going to do, and I'll do one example sentence for you, and I'll just do an oral one. So you're going to pick and work with a partner and create a singular sentence with a singular subject, a sentence with a singular subject, a verb, and then a finisher. And the finisher could be anything that finishes a sentence. And then you and a partner will create another sentence with a plural, with a plural subject, a verb, and a finisher. So for example, and you always want to model examples for your students before you have them do something. So I might say, the enormous elephant to bathe, okay, it's simple present tense, bathes, because I remember that if it's a singular subject, I want to put an S on the verb, bathes her small baby elephant. If I do plural, maybe I want to say they snuggle together after taking a bath in the river. Okay, so your finisher can be anything. Okay, feel free, you can use these subjects. Again, this is where you push the kids. You know, you've got those kids that already have other ideas. If you have a better idea for a subject, a singular or a plural subject or a verb, feel free to use those. Just remember that your sentence needs to be in the simple present tense. And you would have students help you, you know, how do I spell this word and do all that stuff, or have even, you know, for middle school, they can come up and write it. Baby elephant from drowning. What do I put at the end of a declarative sentence? Thank you. All right. So you would do a few more examples with a singular subject. Let's do one. However, we're going to go a little bit quicker since we get this. Julius again. 9 words. We're consistent with our sentences. Okay, so the dirty gray pachyderms bathe in the what kind of tributary? Shallow. Tributary. Okay, so the next step on verb tense study, we've reported the sentences, we've recorded the sentences, is now to go through grammar analysis. So, okay, let's look at our subject. What nouns do we see in this sentence? Elephant, okay. Elephant again over here. Pachyderms in this next one, good. Tributary, okay. And then what's our verb up here? Saves, okay. And since this is the verb, why do we have an S on the end of saves? Because the noun is singular. So you'll just kind of go back to show this is why we have an S on the end. What about with here? What's the verb? Bathe. And then do we have an S on the end of the verb bathe? Because the noun is plural. Good. And then you could continue. I mean, if you also have drowning is another verb. If you want to pull out the adjectives, if the student added adverbs or if you focused on adverbs, you don't want to diagram the entire sentence, but just whatever, again, parts of speech that you want to focus on. All right, and then after that, what you would do, and there's a couple ways that you can go. You could either take this part of your chart and fold it up, and then have the students use the subjects and the verbs and then write their own sentences. And okay, now you go and get a piece of paper, have everybody write one singular and one plural sentence. Or you could give them another picture. Here's a different picture, and then they can work with a partner and create subjects and verbs and then write singular or plural sentences in whatever that verb tense is. Okay.